Wake up, loser, new Taboo just dropped. Now, unfortunately, unless you're a generational hater of Underworld Market, I doubt you're really going to be super interested in this. There's a lot of new FAQs, errata, and rules, and all of it is generally good stuff that is positive for the game. However, I'm much more interested in taboos, and something new that I wasn't expecting, so let's talk about them. The taboos are an incredibly short list. You might be expecting me to scroll through the taboo list and show you all the other changes. It's just 5 cards, and frankly, there were 5 cards that most people didn't have on their radar. As candidates, let's talk about them. First, let's talk about Ravenous Myconids, both Sentient and Carnivorous Strain, the ones that just negate gain mechanics for charges as opposed to the healing one. These have both been chained by 1 experience. I completely just view this as the developers acknowledging the cards are problematic, and it's not worth the dev time to fix. They have a million things on their plate right now, and making Myconid less broken, that requires a good mutation, a mutation that's going to fix the card without killing the card. And everything I've heard so far doesn't actually do it. Stuff like limiting the growths you get to 3 per event doesn't fix the problem, because unless you specifically draw a 4 health enemy, Carnivorous Myconid is going to do the exact same thing. And it's just not gonna be less powerful, it's still gonna be absolutely busted. Sentient Train will definitely be worse if you do that, but it would affect all versions of Myconid, including the healing version if you do any taboo to the event. And speaking of tabooing the event, I've also heard the suggestion that you could just make the event not get clues, and that is wildly, that's changing the identity of the card, right? Because right now, Ravenous Myconid, while you're still functioning as a clover, is going to, on top of that, staple on Mythos Resilience, Healing, or Enemy Management. And you can argue that it shouldn't be on top of that, right? There's totally room to have that discussion. But right now, the identity of Ravenous Myconid is that it wants to be in a book-based clover who's progressing the game to give additional value. And the moment that it stops giving clues, suddenly you're investing 5 experience, a card, an action, a resource, and you're doing the card, action, resource recursively every turn to get this additional value that's not in your role, and you completely change the identity and home of the card. So while that would likely fix the balance outlier issue, where now you're just doing this thing that's still pretty strong, it's not at least progressing the game. It would, however, all but kill the healing variant of the card in my eyes. You'd just be better off running Archive of Conduits. And then the other 2 versions would still be balance outliers for the people who were willing to run them, even if they weren't nearly as problematic, even if they were in a much better state for game balance. You'd be killing one version of the card and completely warping the identity of the other 2, right? So I understand the +1 experience. I see a lot of people with the opinion that this does not fix the card at all, what the hell, man? And yeah, I agree, it doesn't fix the card at all. 1 experience is usually not gonna kill a 1 experience card when you nerf it to 2. It's certainly not gonna kill a 4 experience card that people thought broke the game and was limited to 1 of anyway. This is just acknowledgement of a problem and statement that the solution's not here yet. I pretty much feel certain that next taboo list, Ravenous Myconid will have a different taboo. But for now, it's just slightly more prohibitive to put in your deck, and I'm glad to see it's at least on their radar. I'm gonna come back to Underworld Market in a second. I wanna talk about the other 2 things that got hit. Unscrupulous I can't even say it seriously. Unscrupulous Loan is now campaign only. Yeah. I mean, I guess you do need to balance for standalones, and it's really good in standalone, but I feel like if someone brings Unscrupulous Loan to a standalone game, you just slap it out of their hands and don't get a different card. You don't need a rule to tell you this. It's just really funny. And I wanted to cover Empirical Hypothesis before I covered Underworld Market. This is the last taboo, there are only 5. And I think 2 of them are an acknowledgement of a problem not solved, and one of them's Unscrupulous Loan being funny as hell. So there's really only 2 taboos that I think do anything, and one of them is this, which I'm about to acknowledge doesn't do anything. So super minor taboo list all told. Empirical Hypothesis Lightning Bolt ability will gain the limit twice per round effect. I actually asked in my Discord, I was like, guys, is there hot tech I don't know about? What is this? And the answer is the only thing anyone could come up with. I got a wonderful explanation from PAX about how you can make a specific configuration where your whole team triggers the card. And it doesn't seem that broken because your whole team's playing around the card and it's a 10 experience card. And then the realization, limit twice per round lets your whole team draw off of it anyway, because limits per investigator per card. So that doesn't even affect the 1 super build. So the reason people complain about this is that it's the bastard child of both Rabbit's Foot and Lucky Cigarette Case, and it's just slotless 2 cost draw every round. Is it 3 cost? Whatever the cost is, I forget exactly at this moment. But Empirical Hypothesis is very, very good as slotless draw, and it does the same identities that other classes have. It just feels like it's stepping on toes, because if it says draw, Seeker's allowed to have it, right? It feels like it's stealing the identity of other classes and doing it better. In my opinion on this is that like, I don't actually find Empirical Hypothesis as like this massive outlier broken thing that I'm upset existing. Like that's because I'm gaslit or Stockholm Syndrome or whatever by Seeker into thinking that this bullshit is okay. Like it is an offensively powerful card, but it's in a class filled to bursting with offensively powerful cards. Empirical Hypothesis is hardly where I'd start. Let's put a taboo on Deep Knowledge first, right? So that aside, limit twice per round doesn't affect the way that this gets used, and it's left a lot of people scratching their heads as like, why is this the change? And I wanted to cover this specifically before Underworld Market because my only way to interpret this is something weird is happening with a card from next expansion. That in their playtesting of Drowned City, there's like a 3 cost, a 0 experience asset that has like 6 evidence, can be spent as though it were on other things, does not exhaust, right? Like there's some card where in conjunction with Empirical Hypothesis, it's probably not even a Seeker card, right? Like it's a rogue card. They dump the rogue card, they dump all the evidence off of it with Empirical Hypothesis, as now it's like a 3 cost event that draws 6. Like that's what I think is happening. And the example card I'm using is terrible, I don't think it'll be anything like that. But the only way I look at this and understand it is when there's an ability to spend evidence off something else, like Eldritch Sophist, coming in a future edition of the game. And I wanted to talk about that, leaving me scratching my head and trying to figure out why it got nerfed. Because like I said, unless you're a hater of Underworld Market, I don't think you're gonna be super happy about this taboo list. And frankly, I don't think Underworld Market deserves this. Now, admittedly, I am a person who loves consistency in my decks, even at the cost of power, and spending experience to guarantee your cards, what Underworld Market does, is exactly that. The only direct power it's offering, outside of consistency, is the ability to run things like Hidden Pocket and Embezzled Treasure without ever having to draw them in your deck, and that is a sort of power that is absolutely worthwhile, and it's basically the only way those cards see play. So it is worth acknowledging that absolutely Underworld Market is strong. It's not just a consistency card, it does more than that. However, when you bump it from 4 to 6 experience, which like, yeah, admittedly is the same cost as Beguiling and Ancestral Knowledge and Stick to the Plan, all the other take a pile of cards from your deck and put them aside cards. So like it fits in with that landscape of cards at the same experience now. But you put it side by side with Stick to the Plan, where Stick to the Plan is, like, I don't ever run Ancestral Knowledge and Seekers, and maybe that's just because Seekers are broken and Practice Makes Perfect is broken. So like, let's scrap that one. Let's compare it to the other two. Let's look at specifically Stick to the Plan. It's going to thin your deck by 3 cards. It's going to guarantee your opening economy. Because if you play E-Cash turn 1, Ever Vigilant turn 2, every game, and spoilers, if I have Stick to the Plan, that's what 2 of the cards are, in every iteration of it. That means you have 11 resources to play out your assets effectively. Sorry, 12 resources to play out your assets effectively on turn 2 every game. Stick to the Plan single-handedly secures your economy, and then you get a 3rd utility card that will just be available to you at all times, a sweeping kick, a shortcut, whatever. There's a ton of things it could be. Hell, it could be Carolyn Fern with Dynamite. So I think of Stick to the Plan really, really highly. I think it's absolutely painful to buy a 6 experience card, and Stick to the Plan is the sort of 6 experience card that I am willing to buy. When I compare Underworld Market, I don't think the consistency it provides in finding certain assets on its own is enough to be worth 6 experience. I frankly think that's a little bit too high. I do agree that like the card's pretty ubiquitous, a ton of people run it, because it provides so much consistency that even players who aren't like me, who love consistency and consider Scroll of Secrets one of the best cards in the game, other players look at Underworld Market and like, oh shit, I just won't miss lockpicks. Like that's just, it's off the table, it can't happen. It provides so much consistency that people well outside of me and their taste for cards will end up putting it in their decks anyway. So like, it is very common at 4 experience, but I don't think that gets cards nerfed because like Faustian Bargain, Deep Knowledge, Promise of Power haven't been touched. We've never seen the taboo where it's like, you know what, maybe Deep Knowledge should put a 3rd curse in the bag. Oh, that's still not doing it. 4th curse. How many curses do we have to do before you stop playing Deep Knowledge? Right? We've never seen that. Just being ubiquitous doesn't mean a card needs to be nerfed. And Underworld Market should be viewed the exact same way as if they printed 2 4 experience green cards that were really good draw cards, right? Of course everyone will run them. Green doesn't have great draw. It's incredible consistency in a class that lacks the draw to really find it. It's basically a class that's all in on cigarette case. They don't have draw for shit. So I was thinking about why did Underworld Market get nerfed? Because surely it's not just that it's common and it's not its power level, because I don't agree with those arguments at all. And I don't see eye to eye with tons of people in balance discussions, but like, I think that if I'm this adamant in my opinion, I'm probably not directly at odds with the developers of the game. I think that I'm probably largely in line with their beliefs. So why is Underworld Market getting nerfed? And it comes back to the head scratching and what's coming in Drowned City. Oh, Gatling Gun. This is a preemptive nerf for Gatling Gun. Because it turns out that if you are a Gatling Gun deck, like no one's talking about Chicago Typewriter blowing up the game and being some broke ass card, right? There are no huge experience cards currently going into an Underworld Market. But the moment Gatling Gun hits the game, if you have a 5 experience card that you need to find, do you A, buy a second copy of Gatling Gun, or B, buy Underworld Market to guarantee the first copy in 5 turns, which is more consistency anyway, and they get all the additional benefits of Underworld Market. This is just a preemptive nerf for Gatling Gun, because previously there have never been any high experience cards worth putting in Underworld Market, and now that there is one, it's revealing the problem that Underworld Market is objectively better than the second copy of any experienced illicit card that would go in Underworld Market for more experience than the market cost. I don't think this changes that. I'll buy Gatling Gun for 5 and then immediately buy Underworld Market for 6 instead of the second Gatling Gun, exactly the same. But I do acknowledge that Underworld Market is something of a design problem when it becomes the automatic second buy the moment you buy a 5 experience illicit card. It does make me sad to see it get nerfed, but because it's so common and it is pushing the power level of what a card can be, in conjunction with its problematic nature, not for Gatling Gun specifically, but any high experience illicit card that was worth putting in it, yeah, I think it deserved the nerf. It's a Gatling Gun nerf. It's not because of anything anyone's currently playing with, but it absolutely deserves it in a world with Gatling Gun, so here we are. And lastly, we come to the reason for this taboo list, because I am interested in this. It's Ultimatums, Boons, and on the next page, Refractions. Because while we only have 5 changes on Taboo, this is obviously the meat and potatoes of the FAQ update, right? We've got 2 entire new pages of hot news. Now, unfortunately, Ultimatums and Boons aren't really for me. I will say, the fact that you're all required to use the same ultimatum or boon does make me a little bit sad. I would like to have the option to be like, hey, newer player, would you like to use a boon as you get your feet out from under you to make your deck more powerful, to understand the value of something? Because like being able to play with like the first time you play, you have the boon of Hades and you're seeing what the resources actually do and you don't have to worry about the deck building thing. Or you get a boots of Hermes, or sorry, the boon of Hermes. Makes sense for a slip, I guess. And that allows them to understand how valuable move actions are and extra actions and action economy. I would like the ability to just let new players at a table have this. And I guess like counterpoint, you do it by taking it yourself, and then you play some memey shit to counteract the fact that you're playing it. It's like, it's fine, but I don't really see a reason it has to be among the entire table. Additionally though, the official ruling being that players may just design their own ultimatums. I think it's really funny that like, look, if you want to play with nothing but autofails in the back, go for it. We're not gonna make you not. I don't really think that like having an official rule that you can have any rules you want has any value though. This is just like, it's neat that it's officially endorsed that I can play the game my own way, but like I already knew that it's a board game. So even though there are a ton of ultimatums and boons, I'm really not gonna be covering them because frankly, playing the game on weird hard modes, like if I wanna do that, I'll play a bad character. If I wanna do that, I'll put a deck building challenge down. If somebody else like runs a community event with these, I'm interested, but like if I'm just playing the game, I don't know. I just don't really care for the ultimatums as a concept. I've never cared for the achievements, and for the same reason I don't care for ultimatums. I do think boons have value, especially if you're playing in true solo. Like I can see a lot of people being like, look, in true solo, we just take the boon of Hermes. It just fixes like half the player scaling problem. Not all of it, but a good chunk of it, boon of Hermes will help you with, because like locations are an action tax that exists less for larger teams. And I think like, honestly, I would never play true solo right now, but now if I were to play true solo, I would always take the boon of Hermes as like the officially endorsed, the developer said you can do this and true solo is not balanced. This is gonna be a like at least partway solution to the problem. Lastly, we have Refractions, and I am very interested in these, but it's sort of a confused list. These are scenario specific adjustments as opposed to the campaign wide adjustments of ultimatums and boons. They're still called ultimatums and boons though, and some of them are like straight up bug fix tests, right? The Ultimatum of the Man, the Pallid Mask Path to Carcosa campaign, this is literally just text. I know this first part is just text. I think the whole thing is just text. From Return to the Pallid Mask, right? We don't want this. In the Pallid Mask, you don't need this because it's already there if you're playing Return to Pallid Mask. And if you aren't playing Return to Pallid Mask, you need this. This is a rata. It's a core part of the scenario. This should not be an optional thing labeled as an ultimatum because it's not making the game harder. If anything, the fact the man in the Pallid Mask doesn't die and becomes a corpse roller makes the scenario much easier because it doesn't break. This has no business being listed alongside you get a free move action. It doesn't deserve to be in the same category. This is different. This shouldn't even, not ultimatum death, ultimatum of the man. This is different. This should be like an errata or FAQ. They should be willing to have hard changes that you're required to run if you're running Taboo, because it's just fixing the game in the first place. Derby K made the wonderful point that like earlier in the FAQ, there's a rules fix where one of the locations in the Lost System of Like Vale gains the cave text to fix a wild edge case scenario where the exact wrong order of cards eventually terminates and you can't finish the game because you can't find any new caves. It'd be like if that was the ultimatum of the cave and like the bug fix just was a refraction for some reason. It doesn't make sense. Put it in bug fix where it goes. And then there are other things that are like ridiculous turbo hard modes, like the Ultimatum of Death for the same scenario, where after setup, you immediately advance to Agenda 1A, which is a big boss monster. You spawn at your location, your next location gets 6 Doom because you just lost 6 Doom basically. Or sorry, your next agenda gets the +6 Doom because you lost it when you flipped the first one. And then the Spectre of Death gains the Force text that it's unkillable and heals all damage and exhaust when you kill it. And like, sure, it's a mega exhaust, but we just completely remade the scenario. This is a different version of the scenario. This is a hard mode version with a boss enemy that will never stop chasing you. And that's cool, but this is very much like in line with the other ultimatums, except it's like very specific to one scenario, right? You get an additional random weakness, you get an additional autofail token during setup, right? Like those are things that make the campaign harder. This is a thing that makes a specific scenario harder. I don't know why this is listed in the same category as stuff like Boon of the Dreamer, which is literally just a agenda fix, a doom fix to the finale of the dream side of Dream Eaters. So really there are 3 types of things in Refractions and they desperately need better organization. One is FAQ errata entries that just are in the wrong place. Get this out of here, put it where it needs to be. The second type is hard modes and benefits that are unique to one scenario and are very much optional and not bug fixy. This is a super cool hard mode. I find this more interesting than anything in the ultimatums because I'm never a big fan of numerical difficulty changes. I like new and difficult challenges, and that's exactly what this is, and it would have to be unique to every scenario to use something like this. But then you have things that I really think should be labeled as Refractions of X, or like Boon of the Dreamer, Boon of Atonement, Boon of the Dance. All of these just fix scenarios where people think of them as having really problematic doom thresholds for one thing or another. Not Boon of the Dance, I was thinking it was Boon of Bliss, the next one. These just say like, hey, these finales, well, Shades of Suffering is actually not a finale, it fucking feels like one, it's harder than any other scenario in that campaign, just don't go there. But like, these additional doom thresholds, whatever form they take, are really bug fixes. They're not saying like, oh, we think that scenario was like minorly too difficult. It's wildly common sentiment in the community that doing the optional secret act in Boon of the Dreamer is basically impossible because Doom doesn't reset, and this gives you the Doom time you need to kill the final boss. Frankly, I think +2 Doom threshold is probably too much, but I could be misremembering. The point is, I don't think Boon of the Dreamer is like a boon in the same way that a free move action is a boon. I think this is scenario balance in the same way that making Scroll of Secrets a lightning bolt is card balance. So for me, the big takeaway is while I like stuff with ultimatums and boons, and I'm happy to see it exist for the game, it's really not for me. I'd only ever use boons if I was introducing someone new to the game. Ultimatums aren't really like what I like in terms of difficulty scaling, except for like really specific stuff like the Ultimatum of Death. What I do like are the Refractions as essentially scenario taboo. I want more of that. Like if they're not going to return to, you need to do stuff like the Refractions, and return tos can miss things. So again, I really like Refractions. I think the things that are actually unique to Refractions, where they are scenario-specific balance adjustments, need to be their own thing. Ultimatum of the Man needs to go to errata, and there needs to be a scenario-specific boon and ultimatum section, separate from the balance section of Refractions. Also, just in unrelated news, imagine independently choosing to play a version of Undimensioned and Unseen where all of the broods have the elite trait and you can only kill them with esoteric formula. Like instead of counterattacking the worst scenario, not the hardest, the worst scenario, to make it smoother, you just play with an optional rule that means counterattack can't be done and you have to play it correctly. If you're just gonna resign immediately, you should do this because like then you'll have a smug sense of superiority about the fact that you didn't play the scenario even harder. But like, Jesus Christ, why would I ever turn that on? I like Refractions way more than boons or ultimatums. This matters to me. However, I really wish it was better organized because this very much feels like if you want to do something, dig in this, right? I would rather like Refractions be its own thing, don't give them cool names, and then just like have it be labeled by like, sort it by campaign, sort it by scenario. Be like, oh, Shades of Suffering, it's got a Refraction where it does +1 to Doom. Or even like the weird ones where it's like, oh, Undimensioned Unseen, it's got 2 Refractions, and both make it harder? What the fuck, who did this? I don't want to have to read all the funny names and try to figure out which one I'm looking for. I want it to be neatly organized. And like, funny names are fine when you can't organize these. These are entirely new effects with hopefully thematically appropriate names. God knows Hermes is. But I feel like with Refractions, they should be their own thing. They should be separately organized. The Ultimatums and Boons should be ripped out. Scenario balance should be its own well-organized thing, just like the Taboo list. But this is a first draft of shit that I really like seeing, so I'm glad it's here. Anyway, that's my full take on the Boons, Ultimatums, Refractions, and incredibly minor Taboo update that just went live. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, but before I go, can you do the YouTube algorithm dance? Like, comment, subscribe, all that nonsense. And a massive thank you to the people supporting me both on YouTube as members and on Patreon as patrons. I'll see you in the next one.